Well, hey everybody! I'm excited to really dive in this topic of sleep. We know sleep is so critical to our overall health, and my wife and I we really found this incredible music that has helped our children sleep better, help us get higher quality deep sleep. And my friend here, Michael Tyrrell, has actually developed this, and he developed a company called Whole Tones. And it's a healing frequency music project that helps aid health, creativity, productivity, and well-being. After recording 7 songs at different frequency levels, Michael had been studying for over 20 years. He released his album Whole Tones, the Healing Frequency Music Project, accompanied by his book titled Whole Tones, The Sound of Healing in 2014. And we're going to talk about a new thing that he came out with, which is Whole Tones to Sleep. And Michael, so welcome. And let's talk about how you discovered Whole Tones to begin with. What's the story behind that?
Absolutely. It's actually a pretty epic story. I used to be on staff at Belmont Church in Nashville, and the pastor, Don Finto, at the time asked if I'd like to accompany him to, Jerusalem and also proofread his book, Your People Shall Be My People, because I also proofread documents. And so not to get into a 5-hour story that's in the book, but I'll try to tap all the bases. We got on the flight. What I think your listeners might love, though, is we get to New York to get on the flight, and El Al is very, very stringent security, the Israeli airlines, and so they split me and Don, my pastor, up, and so they were asking us all these really pointed questions, and they were like, and finally, the one guy, I just looked at him, I said, hey, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm coming to your country to share Jesus Christ with everyone I can talk to. And I'm going to leave money, and I'm going to leave instruments over there for worship teams. And he just kind of looked at me with this crazy look on his face, and he goes, moment. So he calls the girl over, and he said, tell her what you just told me. And she starts crying. Now, this is security. They bring my pastor over, and they said, we have to do something. We thought we're getting sent home, And they said, we want to pray for you. And they bent over and put their hands on our feet and blessed our journey and our whole trip going there. And I've never seen anything like that in the airport before. So it was really something. So when we got to Ben Gurion Airport, I remember asking Don, he wanted me to drive. I have no sense of direction. It was just hysterical. I'm in a country I haven't been in. He wants me to drive. And I said, okay. And I said, we're going to get a GPS. And he goes, oh, heavens, no. We already have GPS, which is God's positioning satellite. He knows where we are, and he knows where we have to go. And I just thought, oh, my God, this guy is so awesome. So we started driving, and he had this feeling. He said, I just feel like God wants us to go to Ben Yehuda Street, and there's a coffee shop there. And I didn't even drink coffee then. And he said, we're supposed to go to this coffee shop. And he said, and a guy I know in Tel Aviv is going to meet us there. And I said, oh, so you have a friend who's going to meet us, and he knows we're coming? He goes, oh, he doesn't even know we're coming. And I said, well, how's he going to meet us there? And he said, because the Holy Spirit's going to talk to him. And I'm like seeing a level of faith in a human that just moved me to tears. And I said, okay, cool, let's do that. So we drove to the coffee house. And when we got in the front door, I heard this beautiful piano playing. It was just otherworldly. And then as I'm listening, Dr. Jockers, I'm recognizing the songs, but it's all instrumental and there's no words. And it's a Hasidic coffee house, so Jesus is not allowed there. And this guy is playing worship songs without the words, but they're American worship songs like we would all know. Michael W. Smith, Hillsong, whatever it was at that time. I don't even know if Hillsong was around then, or Vineyard. And I'm just looking at this guy, and he starts staring at me. He's just staring at me. And then he starts giggling and staring at me. And I'm thinking, wow, this is so awkward. And so I looked at him as long as I could. And finally, I looked away and just closed my eyes to listen to the music. And so when his set was over, he made a beeline right to my table. And he said, I know you're a believer. And I said, I am. And I said, and that's my pastor. And we're from Nashville. And he said, as soon as you walked in the front door, I saw it. And he said, and then I knew you knew what I was doing. And so I started giggling. And I said, you're getting away with murder. You're playing worship songs in a Hasidic coffee house. And he said, and I'm getting paid. I was like, so anyway, he said, so listen, but the reason that I need to talk to you is this morning I woke up and Yeshua told me that my whole life's work, I should pack it up and give it away today, that I would meet someone I was supposed to give everything that I've worked on. I said, well, what have you worked on? And he said, the Psalms of David, I've interpreted them into music. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like jaw open. I said, what's your name, by the way? And he said, David. I don't know if I can handle this. And I said, so let me get this straight. So your life's work, he said, I've taken it as far as I can go. And I'm supposed to give it to you. If you'll wait for me till my next set's over, it's all in a backpack. I'm going to give you everything I have, everything I've been working on. And I'm just like, my face feels cold. My hair's standing up. I feel God's presence all over the place. I said, of course we'll wait. So sitting there with Don, he's having a coffee. I'm having a tea. Probably 3/4 of the way through his next set, all of a sudden Don gets out of his chair, goes running to the door, and he's hugging this guy, and they're kissing each other on the cheek. And I'm thinking, that can't be. So he brings the guy, his name's Reuben Duran, brings him to the table. And he said, I told you Reuben was going to meet us here. And I said, how did you know we were here? And he said, I woke up this morning and the Holy Spirit said, I need you to get in your car and drive to this specific coffee house in Ben Yehuda Street. Someone you love is there. He didn't even tell me who it was. So mind blown. So these guys are like freaking out, hanging out with each other. So now the guy goes out to his car, comes back to the table with this backpack full of music. Regular like tab, like for your readers, like the kind you get at the music store where it has the chord forms on it, tells you like basically what key it's in. And the other music was more of an avant-garde notation, closer to what we would call sight singing or solfeggi or singing by line. So you just have intervals, but in order to interpret the interval, you'd have to know what the first note was. And so I'm just looking at this stuff, and I got to be honest, one of them I understood, the other one I didn't have any idea. So I thanked him, kissed him on the cheek, took it with me, and that was it. You know, spent the rest of our time ministering in Nashville, got home, played the tab for him, and since my guitar was tuned like it always is at this point in American tuning, which we'll get to at some point, didn't butter my corn, nothing exclusively awesome about this, you know. And then I moved on to the avant-garde notation, and I couldn't decipher it. I didn't know what it was. So I got frustrated, and I just shoved it in my office drawer, and I didn't touch it for 2 years. And about 2 years later, and I was working as the associate pastor at a church in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I came home. My wife always teases me. She said, our house looks like it's a beautiful mind. Like you've got whiteboards everywhere and you're always working on something to change the world. But she said, this, I knew something was going on because you went straight in the office. And I had this thought in my head, Dr. Jockers. And I thought, I saw my Bible, my NIV thin line sitting on a desk. I'm thinking, I wonder what's on page 222. Now that's a random thought. That's too random to be one of my thoughts. And so I just looked, you know, and I opened it up and I'm thinking while I'm looking for what I'm looking for, if this says anything about David, I'm going to like freak out. So it's like, it's the son of, you know, son of, and then the last line on the page, it's the end of Ruth, by the way. And for your listeners, remember, if you have a bigger type, a different translation, it's not going to be page 222. But if you use an NIV thin line, it's going to be the last words of the book of Ruth. And it said, and David, the son of Jesse, last thing on the line. And I freaked out. I mean, I'm like, no, all these years I've been searching. It can't be this easy. 222, double it. And the Lord just said, yes. I said, 444, that's an A, but that's not our A. That's a different A. That's 4 cents higher. And then I remembered everything I'd learned about David and about his kinnor, his 10-stringed instrument, and how he tuned a little higher in a generation that was tuning a little lower. And the difference that there was thousands of people that did what David did during the time of King Saul, but only one that had an impact, only one that when he played, things happened. And all of a sudden I thought, I may have just found what the song said they were looking for, the missing chord. I might just have found the missing key. I might have found the key of David right before my eyes here. And sure enough, that's, just to give your listeners a little taste, that was the start of realizing that I had to retune music 100% in order to make it bioavailable and have an effect on the body on a cellular level. I had to understand how God wired us and what moves us. And what harmonically balance us is us. And then I had to find out why the other one didn't work, which was 440 hertz. So it's only 4 cents more what I tune to, but it makes all the difference.
Yeah, so explain that real quick for the listeners that aren't as familiar with music. I know, and maybe not as familiar with the Bible either. So in 1 Samuel, it talks about how Saul was tormented by evil spirits, right? And then David would come in, he'd play his harp. and it would calm him down.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, basically it says he was vexed by spirits, which means he was being tormented. Uh, and he would call for David because he'd called for other people before and nothing would happen. But David, here's the interesting thing about David, why I was getting there, is that David couldn't use the instruments of his time. He created his own kinnor. People call it a harp, but it's actually called a kinnor. It's much closer to what we would call a jubilee harp or a portable, almost like your guitar. Like David was, according to Judaism, David was never more than an arm's length away from his kinnor. So he saw it as a weapon. He saw it as worship. He saw it as everything. So the point is, though, is that he had to tune higher, and so he had to build something stronger. And so in essence, when he would play in this other frequency, it took him out of this thing. It just seemed to have paralyzed whatever was evil in the room. When he brought this frequency into that environment, it changed the environment. And so from the very first days of the incarnation of whole tones, I realized that everywhere I went, whether it was hospitals or churches or somebody having a fight, if I started playing, all the chaos stopped. So that's just the beginning.
That's amazing. So you found the key of David, this 444 hertz, and you started putting it to melodies, to different musical tones and whatnot. And so how did that develop? And what did you expect to happen with that?
Well, two wonderful questions. The first thing I haven't shared with too many people, and again, I've spoke to a lot of people that have some semblance of musical understanding, but you really don't need any to understand this. There's a way that we do things like record music, So all I really had was 444, but then I had all the relatives of 444, which 444, if you remember what Nikola Tesla said, he said, if you understood the magnificence of the 3, the 6, and the 9, you would understand the construct of the universe. And so we don't really understand how odd and even harmonics work, but they work the same way the body does. And to make it even more fun for the listener, frequency is everything, and everything has a resonant frequency. So when I speak love to you, you feel it. Yeah. And if I spoke hate to someone, they would feel it. When you're around somebody and you just don't, like, what happens when you sit around someone you meet and you're talking next thing, you go, oh my God, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, why? Because you were resonating with each other. You were on the same frequency. It's hard to break away. In the same vein, you can meet somebody in an instant and you can't get away from them fast enough. It's like, get me away from this person, because they're operating at the opposite spin of the frequency that you're on. Frequency is everything, every thought, every word, our ability today to connect by computer, everything we can think of. And it has a cause and effect. Like in the word, of course, it says that the tongue possesses a power, and that power is what? Life or death. You can speak life or you can speak death. That plant behind you, I guarantee you, I can speak life to that plant and watch it thrive, or I could dry it up to its roots with just a word. And people have always mystified something that's quickly, even by the word, demystified, which is frequency. Every thought, everything, take every thought captive. Why? Because it's the wellspring of life. If what you say is what you become. As a man thinketh in his heart, so he is. So I had to come up with a whole family of frequencies. Okay. Now here's the fun part. This is how I did it. And I don't mind telling anybody how I did it. I got in the studio, first of all, and I have all the musicians in there, and they're waiting for sheet music, and they're waiting for instruction, and they're waiting for me to explain the songs that don't exist. So I sat down in the studio and I just started to cry. And I told them, I said, first of all, you're already on the clock, so you're getting paid. Don't worry about the time. And I said, but you need to pray for me because I have all these tones in my heart. And it's like a well. And I said, I've got to take the bucket down. But when I bring it up, music's going to find it. And I'm just going to start telling you what to do. And when I do, just run to your instrument and start doing it. And so the studio, I think by God's design, not mine, was called the Noise Vault. And it only had isolation booths, meaning we couldn't see each other. We wouldn't have the ability to see each other like we see each other right now. You'd be in another room with your instrument. So we're all flying blind here. But I told them what I heard, and this is what I want you to do. This is what's so awesome about God. So we get in these rooms, and I start finding my way, and then I look through the window, and I can see the engineer, and I nod, and we start playing. Okay, so to tell you that it was like there was a conductor somewhere that could see all of us, and we could see, the music crescendoed, decrescendoed, stopped dead, started again, all spontaneously. And so at the end of this thing where I felt like I should wind it down, I look in the window and I see a very stoic engineer that never has any emotion jumping up and down and freaking out. And I'm thinking, did the studio blow up or something? And he called us all in there. He came in and he says, you're not even going to believe this. And so he started playing it back and we instantly started crying. We realized, and he goes, and it's 22 minutes and 22 seconds. And I went, 22, 22, wow. That's it. Isaiah 22, 22 says, and I'll place the key of David upon his shoulder, and he'll open doors that no man could open and shut doors that no man could close. You got to be kidding me. We did it 7 times in a row in 7 days, exactly 22, 22 with no watches, no clocks, and no line of sight. Now, to add to that, whole tones it's bi-layered, meaning so you have this music, but what the music's playing over are these long beds of tones that I create organically. So what I did was I took the 444 tuning as the center tuning, and I got the Nashville strings to play all of these drones in each of these frequencies that I used for the project. Then I matched that frequency in the coolest way. I got a crystal glass and put incremental amounts with an eyedropper of water until when I did the old, till it just pegged the meter right on the frequency. And then I put them together, I put them in the same track together and made that the underlayment of whole tones and then played all the music on top of it. And like you said, like, what did you think was going to happen? I thought spontaneous healing would ensue. I'd seen things happen before. I watched God touch my mother with just my guitar. I put my guitar headstock on her abdomen. I saw it happen in a church in Ohio, and a woman had Crohn's, and I didn't know she had Crohn's. And right in the middle of a service, I got up and put my headstock on her stomach and started playing, and she got a CT scan, and the Crohn's was gone. So, I mean, I saw crazy things happen, but I didn't have it all put together yet, Doc. And then, so what happened was my wife flew into Dallas to help me drive home. And I don't know, I haven't met your wife yet, but my wife, like, we've been married 32 years and we're on a honeymoon. My wife's everything I'm not, everything I'd like to be when I grow up. I'm the creative freak guy, and she's like the straight admin. Like, I could come home and say, the blind see, the lame, they walk, and the deaf are hearing. She goes, good, it's garbage day. Can you take out the trash? I mean, it's like, and so her first question when she flew in, she goes, can I hear the music? And I was kind of scared, because I didn't even know what this was yet. I just knew it was glorious, but somebody that's just listens to like the radio might listen to this and go, what the? So I put it on in the truck, and we got to the stop sign, and she comes apart. I mean, comes apart. Like, wow. And she looks at me and she goes, this is the reason you were created. This is your magnum opus. This is why God put you here. And I'm freaking, because I'm saying, if she really just said that, this is going to change the whole world. And so that's how it started. I had no idea that when I released it I did it myself. I rented out a place in Orlando, and it was a beautiful theater. It was the Shakespeare Theater, and I invited people, and we packed it out and had people down. Everybody wanted to come hear this music, and I sold everything I had, everything I could make at that point. And so the launch was really good. Then we put it online, and a month later, they told me from the company, they said, you're in 60 nations. And then 3 months later, you're in 70 nations, and then 100 nations. This year, I think the total, we're in 174 nations now. And it's like, when God creates something that he wants for the nations, he just takes it there. I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't like this guy that had a plan or anything. Just the opposite. I just was being obedient. I think probably the biggest secret is that for the first time in my life, maybe instead of asking him to bless what I wanted to do or what I was doing, I just got out of his way. I think that's the truth.
Such a good lesson for us all. Just get out of God's way. And so now recently, obviously, you developed this whole tones to sleep.
Yes.
So talk about that, because sleep is a huge issue. Oh. And, as a clinician working with patients, I would say something like 50% of my clients are just not sleeping well, right? Taking a long time to fall asleep. They're waking up multiple times at night. They're waking up groggy, tired, not feeling fully rested. It is a huge issue. And obviously, Whole Tones has come in and created something. So how did this come about?
Fantastic question. Well, the kind of the impetus of the beginning of it, Dr. Jockers, is that Whole Tones to Go became wildly excited. Everybody wanted the first Whole Tones, and they wanted a device that played it. We're getting all this crazy testimonials, and it helps me relax and sleep. But every time I fall asleep, the drums come in and it wakes me up. And I'm thinking, I didn't create this for a sleeping project. I created it as a synergistic project for the whole body. So at that point, I'm realizing little by little, like what you're saying, that how important sleep is. And being a former insomniac from being a rock musician for years on the road, I understood the misery of going from one day to another without sleeping. So I did a little check on the demographic, and I found that 70 million people in America suffer from some type of sleeping disorder. And I said, how could I not do something for these people? I was just cut to the heart. So I thought, but what can I do? So the first thing I did is, when did I sleep? When I was a baby. But not all babies sleep, but I did. Why? And I remembered my mother, and I remember her holding me to her chest and singing lullabies over me. And I remember the vibration of her body on my little body, and I would just go out in her arms. And I love the word lullaby because it means this is the lull in the time between the good and the bye. This is the time when we're not saying goodbye, we're just saying bye, because I'll see you in a few hours. And so I just thought, you know what, I have to create frequency-based lullabies. So I found 4 that I loved that I knew would work, but then I felt compelled to write 2 lullabies, which I never thought of doing. And one of them was called Angels All Around Me, and we've nicknamed that the song no one's ever heard the end of, because we don't know anyone who ever has. It's 30 minutes long, and most people are long gone by 5 minutes. And so the difference is there's no drums on this. There's no transients or dynamics. It doesn't go up or down in volume. It's just this straight middle of the road, constant, very beyond relaxing frequency-based music, over 3 hours in all. But the funny thing is, so all of this starts in your heart, and then you try to conceive it. And so I'm putting this thing together, and the CMO of our company flies into the studio. And so he's all excited because he gets to be in the studio and hear us record. And I had a harpist coming in that day. And so he's sitting on the couch. About 5 minutes into the first song, I looked over to ask him how he liked it. That can't be. He must just be tired from the flight, right? So anyway, we get the project done. Most of the musicians are asleep almost the whole time in the studio. And I'm thinking, is this really that powerful? You're just wanting to be skeptical with your own stuff. So here's the fun part. So all the musicians go home, the music's in the can, it's all recorded. So me and Brad, my engineer, producer friend, we had to sit over the laborious hours now of mixing all of this and preparing it for mastering. Okay. So we go in the studio. Usually that's a fun so I had 2 cups of coffee that morning, and he had 2 cups of coffee that morning. By 11 o'clock, we're collapsing onto the console. We cannot keep our eyes open. I mean, I need toothpicks. Finally, we got cold brew coffee, and we made it about another hour. And finally, he goes, "What's going on?" And I sat there for a minute and went, "Oh my God, we're so stupid. We're mixing lullabies. This stuff totally works." I think it took me longer to mix Whole Tones of Sleep than any other project because I couldn't stay awake to mix it. I mean, it was, and so, but you think like, hey, Tyrrell's sharp, he's got it. So then I go home and I set up a listening party. Can you imagine? You already got it, but I didn't. So I had food, had all our friends come over, put it on, 5 minutes, the whole room, and a party, listening party over. They heard 5 minutes of one song.
What a party.
That was it. It was a sleeping party. But, when I was in New York, I met with Dr. Oz twice now, and he's really a nice guy. Really, really nice. Most people don't realize where he's coming from and his journey, spiritual journey as well, but really quite a guy. But he said something to me. He looked at me and he goes, because I was talking to him about this, and he said, I got to see it. I got to have one. Anyway, but he said, it doesn't matter what natural supplements you're taking or what allopathic medicine you've been prescribed. If you're not sleeping a minimum of 6 to 8 hours, your body cannot heal. When he said cannot, that was the second big aha. It's like, oh my God, so many of us, we just pound the supplements and we do all the stuff we know is good for us. And rightly so, we need to, I do. But if I'm not sleeping, I'm just throwing stuff down my throat. Yeah. And so I had to make this not only recorded music, but I had to find a way to make a device that had all the bells and hooters of everything you would need to not interrupt sleep. Like a lot of times you'll have like those natural sound players, it's like the sound of a babbling brook or a waterfall. But if you're like me and a lot of people, you hear the seam where the sample ends and starts over again. Like, it'd be like 10 seconds of this and then it repeats itself again. Well, every time it would repeat itself, I'd wake up. So I thought, okay, nature sound devices by home medics, no bueno. White noise is a good thing, but you have to remember the second part of the word noise. It's not the best thing. Your brain is so interesting because your brain loves patterns and it has to tune into something. Now, people that sleep well, they can tune into silence, which is fantastic. But most of us, myself included, I have to tune into something in the room so I don't hear all the other stuff that's going on. You know, I've got like an outdoor water pump. I've got stuff going on. If I don't have a one thing in my room. So when I created this device, I also realized that people are light sensitive. My room's dark. It's cool. It's perfect for sleeping. So the device, I put like soft touch buttons on the bottom, doctor, that were illuminated for 10 seconds only. They're momentary. So if you want to set it, then the light comes on the bottom of the unit, not on the top or the sides where there's a constant light or anything like those crazy clock radios in the hotel. And then they can do whatever they need to do. And then 10 seconds, the light goes out again. Boom, if you need to adjust volume or anything. So the light would go out. There's nothing else that they need to do. It's one button. I made it super simple. But everybody was having the same effect. Like they were saying, oh my God, I put that little, they call it the holy puck, because it looks like kind of like a hockey puck.
Yeah.
But they said I put that on my head, right by my head on my nightstand, and pushed the button on, adjusted the volume, and next thing I know, it was the morning time. So now, as you can imagine, I mean, I'm in a hotel right now, if you can't tell. So I didn't want to miss you, and I knew if I tried to drive across the state, I might miss you. So I didn't want to take a chance, so I stayed at a hotel. And the funny thing is that the first thing in and first thing out of my bag on the road is whole tones to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, we travel with it as well. I was telling you before the call that we've got one in every one of our rooms. So our kids, they sleep great with it. My wife and I, we love it. We enjoy it. And
that makes me so happy.
My wife, I mean, when I met her, she was struggling. She had been on Adderall for 13 years. And then she had actually gone to a drug rehab to help get off of it.
Yeah.
This was before I met her. And by doing that, and also on top of that, her mother actually, in order to help her not wet the bed, had like an electrical shock pants or something like that. So those things, that messes with your ability to relax and get a deep sleep. And since the baby's sleeping through the night now, so we have an 11-month-old, and since we've been using the whole tones to sleep, like we have a Aura ring. You're familiar with the Aura rings, right? Sure. And so we're always comparing our sleep scores, and she's typically in the 90s, right? She's sleeping amazing.
That's fantastic.
Absolutely. And so we definitely want to thank you for that, for creating the whole tones to sleep. I mean, that's been huge. We all love it.
Oh, thank God. One thing that I haven't shared live at all so far, because it just happened, but one of the things a lot of guys, and you probably would too if we would have talked, but testimonials are amazing, especially when they're from brothers and sisters and they come from all over the world. But in our science community, it's not enough. And I initially started out with a lot of testing, and it was always like, well, that's really good, but it's inconclusive. But what happens is that people that probably your listeners don't have any idea, a good test could be $150,000 conducted at a decent university all day. And so you spend, $150,000 for white paper data, and you end up with a bag of nothing, and then they want more. So I kind of gave up on that. Well, thanks to Dr. Oz and Dr. Michael Bruce, if you've ever heard of him, the sleep doctor.
Yeah.
Another crazy guy. They both said, and they said it in a way that was like kind of like hitting me over the head with a hammer. They're like, you keep asking us the same question, we keep giving you the same answer. You won't move a marker in the scientific community until you have white paper data. So long story short, they turned me on to a woman that did this massive sleep study in Jacksonville, and it finished 2 weeks ago. And the response is absolutely over the top. I mean, it could have been a strikeout. Could have been like, it didn't work at all. It worked so well that actually they're publishing the findings in 2 different scientific journals and a medical journal. And I can furnish you this week after our interview with those actual statistics and the real numbers. But that the one thing that made me happy just is because I'm not a doctor. I'm just like this crazy Willy Wonka music guy that loves people. you guys need data and you deserve it. You know, if you're going to work with stuff that I make, I want it to ring the bell for you guys so you can stand behind it and feel confident. Well, now I'm saying even with QVC, when I go back on QVC, they're going to have hard data for their legal department that if I make a claim, they've got it, which is such a game changer for me.
That is huge. That's huge. So they just did this huge study. How many people were at the study?
40.
40 people. Wow. So
40
that's
people.
great.
And they're doing one now. I don't know if you've ever heard of Hippocrates.
Oh, yeah. Health
It's West
Institute.
Palm.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to do a year-long sleep study for me with all of their incoming patients, and they're not charging.
Wow, I love it.
Can you imagine? That's $1 million test right there.
Yeah,
and they're
exactly.
not charging because they've had such great results in the clinic with people that can't sleep, and that's the big thing for me. If you could move a marker, I mean, that's what you've given your life. I read your bio too, and mine too. If I could help one person, and they came back and said, "You changed my whole life," it's worth it. But if you can move a marker in a country that has 70 million people suffering in one area, that's awesome.
Optimizing sleep is so powerful for your overall health, your brain function. I mean, literally, your brain cleans itself when you're sleeping. And so if you're not able to clean yourself over time, you're going to end up developing dementia, Alzheimer's disease. You're going to end up developing heart disease. I mean, a whole bunch of cancer, a lot of different things related to the immune system, inflammation that are associated with not sleeping well. And so also about some of the testimonials that they're getting over the years.
I picked a couple out. Let's see here. These are great. These are all brand new ones too. So every morning people, I said, so what do you and your wife do in the morning? So we get a cup of coffee and I get a box of Kleenex and we read the testimonials that come in every day from around the world. And it absolutely wrecks me every day. So here's a couple. Some of these are kind of long. I'll read the shorter ones. I love this. I had not slept through the night for years. I bought whole tones to sleep as a last-ditch effort. I've been using it now for a month, and I sleep through the night every night. I highly recommend this to anyone, especially if they're having trouble sleeping or staying asleep. Now, that's the big one. You mentioned that.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't mention that. It's one thing to fall asleep. Most people can nod off eventually, but they wake up, then they can't get back to sleep. That's the problem. So if you have this constant lulling frequency going on, it just brings you right. It's like some people wake up and they take another melatonin, and then they feel horrible when they wake up because they're messing with their circadian rhythm, which you mentioned. It's like all of our organs clean themselves during the night, at a specific time. And that's why the Lord, created us that way. We are supposed to sleep because if we can sleep, we can heal. If we can relax, we can sleep. If we sleep, we will heal.
Yep.
And just the opposite is true if we don't. I have a history of getting to sleep and then staying asleep. I purchased one recently about 2 to 3 months ago. Now I'm sleeping 7 to 9 hours a night every night. Elaine Gregory. I was taking sleeping pills, including Ambien, for 10 years. Since Whole Tones, about 3 months now, I have not taken one sleeping pill. Simply, this really works. Darlene Smith. My husband wanted this. He's recovering from surgery and is temporarily sleeping downstairs. Night number 1. He said after about 20 minutes, he was still awake and went to turn it off. He awoke in the middle of the night and the music was still on, so he was surprised and realized that it worked. Each night since then has been a successful night's sleep. It's been such a small device and such a huge quality of sound. So excellent and such a huge blessing. The beautiful and tranquil music literally lulls you to sleep. In fact, I found it very meditative and relaxing to focus on the music, which kept my mind engaged. With my mind having something intentional to concentrate on, it alleviated the wandering mind syndrome that normally plagues my sleep. So I sleep now soundly and therefore wake up totally rested. And that's the other thing. How many people have you talked to that say, man, I just can't shut my brain off? Or man, I'm solving all the world's problems at 3 o'clock in the morning. Or man, I watch the Hallmark Channel till 2 a.m. They just can't shut the brain down. In part and parcel also, we won't go there, but EMFs, for example, your cell phone, you know how many people sleep with their cell phone? Literally, in the bed or right by their head on Wi-Fi.
Yeah, crazy.
They're just getting cranked. And then all that blue light, if you're not using it, at least using a red lens, if you dare sleep in bed reading, emails or Facebook on a device, you're just blasting your neutron. I mean, your poor brain is just going tilt.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, definitely made a huge difference. And there's other things out there. There's a lot of other things that people are doing obviously to help improve sleep.
Yes.
But what I've found is that the whole tones is just, it's a perfect complement. I mean, there are other things you can do. Obviously, good sleep hygiene is so critical. You know, hydrating your body well, getting the right supplements, things like that, all very, very important. But I find that whole tones really has made the biggest difference when I'm working with clients and helping improve their sleep quality. So, Michael, I just want to thank you again for your life's work, for what you're doing. It's been absolutely incredible. And you're probably, if you're listening, you're probably wondering where you're going to get the whole tones to sleep. And so we've got a link right under this. So check out the link. And also we have a special discount as well if you use the code DRJ, as in Dr. J 10. So that will go ahead and give you 10% off your purchase. So that way you can go ahead and get started with this. I mean, we got one, and then we were so excited about the one that we ended up getting one for every room in our house. So, so I think the listeners here will find the same results and be excited about this. So, any last words of inspiration for us?
Yeah, sure. One of the things that I always tell people too is that all great discoveries tend to be by subtraction. I mean, even in history, if you look, even medical ones, you know, they were looking for something and they found something else that was far more substantial. You know, it was subtraction. And the same way with whole tones. I just wanted to help people. I had no idea how much this would help people. In the book that I wrote, The Sound of Healing, like I'm not like a seller person, I'm not a salesman, but I tell everybody, if you're going to get a player, get the book, and there's a reason why. Because most people don't understand themselves. They don't understand how frequencies work. They don't understand the power of what you say. And when you read this book, I've just been given an innate ability to demystify very heady and difficult things in a way that you can read it probably in one segment of a flight. But that book and that player together can solve some serious issues in your life and help. Again, it's one piece, like you said, it's one piece of the puzzle. There's so many other, but this one particular piece can really help unscramble a lot of people's eggs and can really help them get, you know, a great night of sleep. I always say it the funny way, but I say when you stop counting sheep, you'll start counting your blessings. You'll have things to be thankful for.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so good. And, you know, you're just making such a big difference. And we're excited about whole tones and spreading the word. And I think the listeners will get just so much out of that. So thank you so much for listening in. And definitely take action. Get the whole tones to sleep, especially if you're struggling with sleep. You have a family member that is also a perfect gift for people as well. We plan to gift these out now that we've been using them for about 6 months with great results. So a great gift to help people. And you know, when people sleep better, they're better to be around. They're more fun, more enjoyable to be around. You have better relationships. They're more productive. They're able to really accomplish goals and dreams that they may not have thought they could. So amazing creativity comes alive when you're able to sleep well. So thanks again, Michael. Appreciate you so much. And thanks for everybody listening in.
Blessings.